The terminal hums with the usual rhythm, rolling suitcases, muffled announcements, the click of polished shoes against tile. Elijah moves through it quietly, a backpack slung over one shoulder, his boarding pass folded twice in his palm. People notice him, but not with warmth. Their eyes slide past his face and then return, uncertain, curious, judging. He stops at the gate. A woman in uniform checks passports without looking up. When she finally does, her smile flickers. Not cruel, just cautious, like she's adjusting her tone for someone she wasn't expecting. "Morning," Elijah says softly. His voice carries calm, practiced over years of keeping the peace. Her fingers hover over the keyboard. "You, with Group A?" He nods. "Yes, ma'am." A pause. Just long enough to make the air feel heavier. Then the scanner beeps green. She forces a small laugh. "Enjoy your flight?" He steps aside. Another man behind him, white, younger, gets a brighter greeting. A small detail, but the kind that lives under the skin. Narration slips in quietly. He's learned to hear difference in tone, to feel distance in politeness, to walk through rooms where he's allowed but not welcomed. At the window, Elijah watches the plane taxi across wet pavement. His reflection stares back, not angry, not broken, just aware. Behind him, two passengers whisper about a security check they thought he'd be pulled for. He doesn't turn. Silence is its own defense. A soft announcement echoes overhead. Boarding soon. He exhales slowly. Another flight, another room, another reminder that sometimes the hardest journey isn't across countries. It's through people's assumptions. The camera lingers on his face, calm, steady, before fading into the sound of engines rising. The line moves fast until it doesn't. Claire's voice, warm and rehearsed, wraps easily around every passenger until Elijah steps forward. Her smile falters. Just slightly, but enough for him to notice. "Boarding pass, please," she says, tone clipped, eyes scanning his clothes before the barcode. He hands it over calmly. "Seat 14A. Her scanner beeps, a small red flash. She frowns. Says it didn't register. "Are you sure this is your flight?" He blinks. "I just cleared security." She glances at the other attendant, murmurs something under her breath. They both look at him, then at the ticket again. The man behind Elijah sighs loudly, checking his watch. The silence grows teeth. Finally, the scanner beeps green. Claire forces a tight smile. "There we go." "Technical glitch," Elijah nods. "Happens. But it's not the glitch that lingers. It's the way her voice drops 2 degrees colder. The way the people behind him stare like he caused the delay. As he steps past, she adds quietly, "Enjoy your flight." The tone is neutral, but the words land heavy. Narration threads through the moment like fog. It's never the words. It's the pause between them. The pause that says, "I see you, but I don't trust you yet." He finds his seat window side. Across the aisle, a young boy watches him curiously, whispering to his mother. The mother leans in, whispering back, too softly to hear, but not softly enough to hide her unease. Elijah looks out the window. The engines hum. The same hum he's heard 100 times, but today, it sounds different. His phone vibrates with a text from his mother. "Be safe, son. The sky's not always fair," he exhales. The smile he wore this morning, gone. The seatbelt sign flickers off. Claire adjusts her blazer. Posture perfect. Voice smooth as metal, polished too many times. "Sir," she begins, leaning slightly toward Elijah. "Would you mind keeping your bag completely under the seat?" "It seems slightly out." Elijah glances down. The bag isn't. Still, he slides it in further. "Sure," she nods, too sharp. "Thank you. Just following procedure." Her words land like tiny stones, harmless alone, but heavy in repetition. Elijah offers a faint smile, the kind that says he's used to this. A passenger across the aisle, an older man, shifts uncomfortably, pretending to read his newspaper. He's seen this play before, but never bought a ticket. Claire moves on, serving water, exchanging small talk, cheerful, efficient, until her eyes find Elijah again. Every movement from him seems to trigger something invisible in her. When he asks for a drink, her tone flattens. We're out of ginger ale, yet moments later, the woman beside him gets the same can he'd asked for. He watches quietly, no anger in his eyes, just a deep stillness. Narration. This is how it works, framed as order, sealed in rules. The system never raises its voice. It just corrects you until you shrink enough to fit its comfort zone. The plane hums. Claire adjusts her earpiece, tapping her tablet, avoiding his gaze. Elijah looks toward the window, clouds like white lies floating below. His reflection meets hers briefly in the glass, a mirror of quiet endurance against controlled superiority. "Everything all right, sir?" she asks again, voice coated in courtesy. He nods. "Everything's fine." But the silence after says otherwise, and for the first time, she looks away first. Elijah lowers himself into the seat, the leather cold against his palms. His fingers trace the tiny silver beads of his mother's bracelet, dull from time but bright enough to hold memory. The plane vibrates softly as engines hum to life, but his world narrows to that touch, that rhythm. Narration. Some memories don't comfort you. They hold you still when everything else tries to shake you apart. He remembers her voice, low and steady. "Never let them teach you anger, Elijah. Teach them silence." Claire passes by, pausing for a split second, eyes darting to his wrist, to the skin beneath it. A quiet assessment. "Nice bracelet," she mutters. "It isn't a compliment." He nods once. "It was my mother's." She hesitates, caught between curiosity and dismissal. "Looks sentimental." "It is," he says softly. The way he says it makes her step back. Narration. There's something about calmness that unnerves those who expect apology. The passenger beside Elijah, a young woman, shifts uncomfortably. "You handled that well?" she whispers. He gives a faint smile. "It's easier when you've had practice." Claire's shadow passes again, deliberate. She adjusts an overhead bin that doesn't need fixing. The air thickens. The hum of the engine grows louder. Or maybe it's just inside Elijah's chest. He turns toward the window, pressing his fingers to the glass. The bracelet glints once under the cabin light. Narration. Dignity isn't loud. It's what's left when pride and pain cancel each other out. He closes his fist, holding the bracelet tight. Somewhere between defiance and restraint, silence becomes his shield, and the flight, his quiet battlefield. ChatGPT said, "The aisle smells faintly of coffee and fear." Claire leans closer to the younger attendant, her smile polite, her tone edged with warning. "Keep an eye on him," she whispers, just loud enough for the words to survive the engine's hum. The girl nods, unsure, obedient, and moves down the aisle pretending to check seatbelts. Narration. It's never shouted. Prejudice travels best when it sounds like procedure. Elijah senses it. Not from the words, but from the air, how it shifts, how people glance a second too long. He keeps his gaze on the window, watching clouds drift like ghosts of better places. The attendant pauses near him, hand tightening on the seat. "Would you like another drink, sir?" He looks up slowly. "No, I'm good." Her smile flickers. She walks away, but her eyes linger in reflection. Across the aisle, a man frowns uneasy. "What's going on?" he mutters. Claire answers smoothly. "Just routine. We've had issues before." The man nods, trusting her tone more than truth. Narration. That's how it happens. Trust bending toward authority, and suspicion handed to the quiet ones. Elijah adjusts his bracelet again, steadying himself. He knows the story isn't new, only the setting changes. Claire meets his eyes once briefly. There's something in her stare, not confidence, but control clinging to its last thread. The plane vibrates, steady and merciless. Elijah doesn't flinch. Narration. Sometimes silence isn't surrender. It's the start of resistance too calm to be seen. He exhales, slow and measured. The reflection in the window watches back. A man prepared for what always comes next. ChatGPT said the hum of the plane sits heavy, too calm, too steady, like it's holding its breath. Claire moves through the aisle, smile rehearsed, steps clipped. Her tray clinks softly as she stops by Elijah's row. "Would you like something to drink?" she asks, tone crisp, detached. Elijah glances up. "Water's fine, thank you." Her eyes flicker. "We're out of bottled. Tap okay?" A pause, he nods. "That's fine." The silence stretches. Passengers nearby glance, sense something, but say nothing. She pours, the sound sharp against the drone of engines. Narration. It's never the words. It's the pauses between them, where judgment hides, where dignity is tested. As she hands the cup, their fingers nearly touch. She withdraws too quickly, wiping invisible residue on her uniform. Elijah notices, doesn't react. Across the aisle, a teenage girl watches, her earbuds half out. Her eyes dart from Claire to Elijah, then down to her lap, as if shame might catch her too. "Is everything okay here?" The older attendant asks, tone dipped in habit, not concern. Claire answers lightly, "All good. Just keeping an eye." The phrase lands soft but heavy. Elijah hears it. Everyone does, though no one looks up. Narration. Some words wear masks. Procedure. Policy. Safety. But beneath them, there's always something unspoken. Something that stains even silence. Elijah leans back, the seat groaning under quiet restraint. "You always this careful with passengers?" His voice is calm, a blade wrapped in cloth. Claire freezes for half a second. "Just doing my job." "Must be exhausting," he says softly, her jaw tightens. She turns away, straightens her collar, pretends to fix a buckle. The hum of the plane swells, drowning everything except the weight of what wasn't said. Narration. Up here, above the clouds, prejudice doesn't need volume. It just needs a uniform. Claire's voice slices through the cabin, calm but pointed. "Sir, I saw you adjusting the overhead compartment. Please step aside when we land." Elijah doesn't move. "I was just reaching for my bag. Nothing else." She steps closer, eyes narrowing. "Security will need to verify. For safety." Narration. Every syllable carries weight, a subtle accusation that blooms into suspicion. Innocence becomes a story told by someone else. A passenger murmurs beside him, phone half raised. Did she just say that?" Elijah's jaw tightens. "She did." "It's fine." Claire tilts her head. "Do you understand? We have procedures. This isn't personal. It feels personal," Elijah says softly. She stiffens. "Procedures are universal." A hush falls over the aisle. Other attendants glance down, pretending to tidy trays, hands trembling slightly. The hum of the plane becomes a quiet drum of tension. Narration. The room holds its breath. Eyes dart, cameras phone-bound, capturing moments that will outlive the flight. Another passenger whispers, "It's nothing, just a mistake, right?" Elijah responds almost to himself, "Mistake or choice? They often look the same to the world." Claire's lips press into a thin line. "Sir, I'm only asking that you comply." "I am," he says, folding his hands in his lap, calm as stone. Narration. In the quiet between accusation and compliance, dignity doesn't shout. It waits, measured, patient, knowing the world may catch up later. The teenage girl across the aisle lifts her phone. Her hands shake. Claire notices, flinches slightly, then straightens as if nothing happened. Elijah glances at her, voice low. "Go ahead. Record it. The truth doesn't need permission." She nods, barely audible. Click. Narration. A single act of vigilance can tilt a sky already heavy with prejudice. What began as a lie now has witnesses, unseen or unwilling, but inevitable. Claire retreats to the front, muttering under her breath. Elijah stares through the window, his reflection steady, while the plane continues its quiet, tense glide through the clouds. The wheels screech, brakes hiss, and the plane slows. Claire straightens her jacket, hands trembling slightly beneath the crisp folds of her uniform. "Sir, please remain seated until instructed," she says, voice steady but sharp. Elijah doesn't rise immediately. He waits calm. "I will," he says quietly, eyes forward, hands folded over his backpack. A security officer steps down the aisle, radio clipped to his shoulder. "We'll need you to come with us, sir," he says. Narration. Every movement is amplified. The weight of authority pressing down, uniformed figures taking the stage while dignity waits quietly in the wings. Claire glances at the officer, whispering, He was tampering." The officer's eyes flick to Elijah. "We'll verify on the ground." A passenger mutters from the row behind, phone raised. This is ridiculous." Elijah meets the officer's gaze. "I'll cooperate. Just make sure the recording captures the truth, too," he says, voice even, calm. Claire shifts uneasily. I followed procedure," she stammers, though her voice lacks conviction. Narration. Procedures here are shields, masks to hide bias, but they crack under scrutiny. Another passenger leans toward their neighbor, whispering, "Did you see?" "He didn't do anything." Elijah nods faintly to the phones, voice soft. Sometimes, silence proves more than protest. The officer gestures for Elijah to stand. He rises slowly, movements measured, dignity intact. No rush, no panic. Claire watches, lips pressed tight, realizing the control she thought absolute is now mediated by cameras and witnesses, by truth quietly asserting itself. Narration. The aisle hums with tension. The world outside waiting to judge, but here, in this moment, the quiet strength of one man contrasts every uniformed authority around him. Passengers murmur. Phones click. Claire steps back, hands fluttering over her belt. Elijah walks calmly toward the front, past whispered commentary and the silent gaze of security, leaving a trail of unspoken truths behind him. ChatGPT said, The notification sound is soft but relentless. A passenger's hand hovers over the phone, thumb shaking. I have to, they whisper to themselves. The screen displays Elijah standing still. Composed as Claire gestures toward security, the plane cabin frozen mid-motion. Upload it, another passenger murmurs, voice low, almost fearful. The thumb presses, and the video begins its silent journey into the world. Narration. A single act turns private humiliation into public reflection. One camera, one witness, suddenly more powerful than years of hidden bias. In another city, a news alert pops up. Passenger confrontation caught mid-flight. Airlines respond. A newsroom hums with chatter. This is going viral, one anchor says, adjusting the mic. Back on the plane, Elijah sits upright, hands resting lightly on his bag. He doesn't speak. Silence carries him through the cabin. Claire stares at the departing passengers' screens, anxiety tightening her chest. They will see the truth differently, she says, voice barely above a whisper. The officer beside her shrugs. We follow procedure, ma'am. The passengers decide what they see. Narration. Procedures cover comfort, not conscience. Public attention exposes what authority hoped to hide. At home, Elijah's father, Richard, watches the clip unfold on his tablet. His jaw tightens, memories of a distant estrangement rising. Finally, he murmurs, voice low, the world notices what we've ignored. Back on social media, hashtags trend. Users debate, share, comment, but Elijah does not intervene. His single post is short. Sometimes silence tells more than outrage. Passengers whisper among themselves, some nodding at each other, realizing the weight of what they witnessed. Phones rest quietly, cameras captured, but dignity moves without amplification. Claire deletes the recording from her own device, chest tight, heart racing. The world has started to see, and the theater of authority she clung to begins to crack. Narration. Justice is slow, silent, but unstoppable when patience and dignity meet exposure. Elijah remains calm, unshaken, composed, a quiet storm amid public eyes. The office lights hum softly. Richard Carter stands by the window, hands clasped behind his back, watching the city stretch below. His tablet vibrates. News alerts, social media notifications, videos of his son mid-flight. His chest tightens, not with fear, but recognition. "Did you see this?" an assistant asks, voice low. Richard doesn't answer immediately. He scrolls through clips, watches Elijah remain composed, dignified, untouched by the chaos. "I built a company that flies above clouds, yet it forgot the ground," he mutters. "Sir?" Richard turns slowly, eyes meeting the young manager's. "Do you understand what people are seeing?" The manager swallows. "Yes, but the reaction, it's intense. Social feeds are..." Richard raises a hand. "I know, but this isn't just a viral moment. It's a reflection of everything I failed to protect. Everything I let remain hidden behind procedure and protocol." A pause stretches. The assistant shifts uneasy. "So, what now?" Richard's gaze softens but remains sharp. "Now we listen. Not as executives, not as managers, but as people who allowed complacency to shield prejudice." Flashback. A younger Richard, estranged from his family, signing contracts, climbing stairs, leaving behind a small boy watching from the doorway. "I'm building for the future," he had said. That boy, Elijah, never forgot the lessons, the absence. Back in the present, Richard turns toward the conference room. Chairs empty, screens dark, but the weight of his decision presses down. Privilege doesn't roar. It trembles in silence. And silence, he pauses, voice low, can be louder than any accusation. The office is quiet. Assistants and executives exchange looks, understanding shifting into unease. Walls of authority, polished and tall, begin to feel fragile. Richard exhales, fingers brushing the edge of his desk. He didn't need me to fight for him. He needed me to see what I'd ignored. That's the real failure, and the real awakening. Narration. Power is often hidden in plain sight. Its unraveling is subtle, measured, yet unstoppable. Elijah's dignity becomes the mirror in which the empire finally glimpses itself. Richard Carter steps onto the stage, calm but measured. The cameras swivel instinctively, flashes punctuating the stale air. He stands beside his son, Elijah, whose posture is composed, almost serene. The murmurs ripple through the audience, executives shifting in their seats, scripts forgotten. Claire Whitmore stiffens, gripping her notes as if they could anchor her. She swallows hard. I didn't expect," Richard interrupts gently, voice even. "No one expected anything. That's the point." A journalist leans forward, pen poised. "Mr. Carter, your son was involved in an incident on one of your flights. What is your position?" Elijah lifts his chin slightly. "My position is simple. When people are treated as threats because of their skin or their background, the system fails. Not just the individual, it fails all of us." Claire's breath catches. She hears it, the weight of those words, more damning than any media soundbite. Richard nods subtly. "We've been protected by silence too long. Procedure doesn't justify prejudice. Today, we face that." Another executive whispers, "Should we respond?" Richard's gaze sweeps the room. "The only response required is acknowledgement. Apologies are secondary. Action matters more." Claire tries to interject. "But..." Elijah's voice cuts through softly, commanding yet calm. "No, Claire, you don't need to speak. What you did will speak for itself, as it always does. Actions, or lack thereof, echo louder than any words we deliver here today." The room feels smaller, the air heavier. Phones tilt toward flashes of this quiet confrontation. The audience leans in involuntarily, realizing the optics are no longer in their favor. Richard steps back slightly, letting his son's dignity occupy the space. "We start by listening, learning, and correcting. That's the work that comes after exposure, not humiliation." Claire lowers her eyes. She wants to argue, but the room has shifted. The executives, journalists, and cameras, none of them shield her now. The power she assumed is gone. Narration. Silence can carry more weight than accusation. In that room, silence walked in, and for the first time, It held judgment heavier than any court, revealing the truth without a single raised voice. Elijah steps forward, adjusting the lapel of his jacket, shoulders steady despite the weight of every camera and gaze. The hum of microphones and whispered questions fades as his presence claims attention. He begins, voice soft but deliberate. For years I've learned to measure my words, to survive without provoking the people who see threat before truth. Today I speak not to accuse, but to reveal what happens when silence protects injustice. Claire Whitmore's grip tightens on her folder. Her composure, so meticulously rehearsed, begins to falter. She glances at the executive beside her, silent, uneasy, and then at the journalists, pens frozen mid-air. One reporter asks, hesitant, "Elijah, are you blaming anyone in particular?" Elijah shakes his head slowly. "Blame is easy. Accountability is hard. This room, these systems, the policies that cloak prejudice in professionalism, these are what we must confront, not just for me, but for every person whose dignity was overlooked, whose humanity was measured against fear." A pause. The silence stretches, heavy, almost tactile. Richard Carter nods once, subtly, signaling support without intrusion. Claire's voice wavers. "But procedures exist for a reason. Safety." Elijah turns toward her, calm, unflinching. "Safety is essential, yes. But when procedure becomes a shield for bias, it endangers the very principles it claims to protect. We must see beyond, comfort beyond hierarchy, and recognize the harm that thrives in quiet compliance." A murmur travels through the room. Executives glance at one another, pens lower, postures shift, cameras click. Elijah's measured cadence piercing decades of unspoken norms. Elijah continues, voice unwavering. "We do not need loud protests here. We need clarity, reflection, action. Silence has power, but so does courage spoken softly. Let this be a moment where dignity, not fear, defines authority." Claire lowers her eyes. Her trembling hands no longer clutch the folder. The empire she served with pride now seems fragile under the weight of truth. Narration. One calm voice can fracture centuries of quiet oppression. In that room, words were neither weapon nor plea. They were light, cutting through shadowed corridors of privilege, leaving no denial unchallenged. Elijah steps back as the room shifts, the tension hanging like storm clouds finally breaking. Richard clears his throat, eyes scanning the room with a measured gravity that commands attention. "Today marks a change," he begins. "Procedures will be revised, accountability will be enforced, and those who failed to uphold the dignity of our passengers will face consequences." Claire Whitmore stares at her folded name tag, hands trembling just enough to betray her composure. She opens her mouth to speak, but no words come. Her rehearsed defenses crumble under the weight of truth, every camera lens capturing her silence. A low murmur rises among the audience, building into soft claps. The applause is cautious at first, then steady, a release rather than triumph. Each hand striking wood, each nod, carries recognition of the long, quiet suffering finally acknowledged. Elijah remains still, shoulders square, voice calm as he adds, "This isn't victory for one person. It's a reminder that dignity cannot be optional and justice cannot be selective. Let this moment reflect not anger, but reflection. Let it remind us all what we owe to one another in honesty and respect." One executive exhales, a subtle nod of approval. Others glance at one another, realizing the shift in power is not in loud protests, but in restraint, in clarity, in the truth that refuses to bend. Claire finally speaks, voice soft, almost a whisper. "I understand." Her eyes drop to the floor, seeing for the first time the consequences of silent prejudice. Narration. The storm had passed, but the air still trembled. Not with celebration, but with recognition, the kind that presses against the chest and opens space for change. Applause rang not for triumph, but for release. The quiet acknowledgement of wrongs, the restoration of dignity, and the promise that silence no longer shields injustice. Elijah turns, stepping toward the exit. Each footfall is measured, deliberate. The world watches, yes, but it listens too. Behind him, cameras capture the moment, not to immortalize him, but to hold a mirror to all who had turned away before. Claire presses pause on her laptop, but the image lingers. Elijah's calm face, framed by the cabin lights, her accusations suspended in time. She leans back, hands gripping the armrests, and exhales slowly. Why me?" she mutters, voice trembling. The room offers no reply. Only the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant traffic beyond her window. The emails pile up, formal. Notices, HR follow-ups, polite reminders of suspension, but they carry no warmth, no confrontation, just cold protocol. A knock sounds. Claire doesn't move. She knows who it isn't. The neighbors have stopped looking in. No one calls. No one confronts her. The viral clip circulates elsewhere, retold in brief captions without her presence. Her authority has evaporated quietly, invisibly. Her phone vibrates. She glances at it. A message from a former coworker. "Hope you're okay. Heard about everything?" She sets it down. Replies feel meaningless. Words cannot rebuild what the world refuses to see. Narration. She expected anger, confrontation, even apology. But the silence is heavier than any outcry. Regret has no stage, and humiliation has no audience. The quiet is crueler than public outrage, a verdict passed in absence, where memory becomes erasure. She stands, pacing, catching herself in the reflection of the window. Her own face, pale under lamplight, shows the unraveling of composure she thought unshakable. She touches her name tag, folded neatly in her drawer, and feels the weight of insignificance press down. Maybe it was never about being right, she whispers, more to herself than to anyone else. The hum of the city seeps in, indifferent. The storm she thought she controlled has passed, leaving nothing but dust. Claire sinks onto the couch again. She scrolls the news, the apology statements, the commentary, but she finds no closure, no acknowledgement. Only her own reflection staring back. Power can vanish quietly. Justice can arrive without spectacle. And sometimes the world simply moves on, leaving those who wielded it to confront the emptiness of their own silence. ChatGPT said, Richard stirs. His coffee slowly, the spoon clinking against porcelain. Elijah watches, hands folded, calm. The cafe hums around them, soft chatter, the hiss of the espresso machine, ordinary sounds that feel alien in this space of reckoning. You didn't defend me, Elijah says, voice quiet but steady. Richard swallows, nodding. I defended what I should have built long ago. Elijah looks down at his cup, tracing the rim with a finger. Silence stretches, not awkward, but heavy with everything unspoken. Mom would have... Elijah hesitates, then lets the thought trail off. Richard leans back, eyes on the wall behind his son. She saw it. She knew what I didn't. Knew you needed more than words, more than authority. Needed presence, truth. Elijah lifts his gaze, studying his father. The man who shaped an empire now seems fragile, smaller than he ever allowed in the office. And now? Richard exhales. I try. I'm learning. I want you to see that I'm trying, even if it's late. Even if it won't erase the past. Elijah nods slowly. The calm in his voice carries no triumph, no accusation. It's not about erasing. It's about knowing. About understanding what silence costs. Richard's hand trembles slightly, brushing the table. I failed you. I failed your mother. I can't change that, but I can start here now, with you. Elijah reaches across, just enough to rest a hand near his father's. Not touching, but close. We start by seeing each other. By speaking, even when it's hard. That's how legacy survives. And not power, not money, not name, presence, truth. Richard swallows again, voice husky. Presence. Truth. I'll remember. Elijah smiles faintly, the tension in his shoulders softening. That's enough for now. That's all anyone can ask. One table, one conversation, one lesson. That's how we rebuild. Narration. The air carries the weight of generations. Mistakes, silence, survival. Healing does not roar. It sits quietly across the table, letting comprehension and humility fill the spaces once occupied by power and absence. Elijah slides into the window seat, fingers brushing the bracelet his mother left behind. The hum of the plane is familiar. Less threatening now, more a lullaby than a warning. Across the aisle, passengers chat quietly, unaware of the storm that once roared above 30,000 feet. A flight attendant passes, eyes polite, respectful. No whispered warnings, no tense glances. Elijah catches her subtle nod and returns it with the faintest smile. "Good morning, sir," she says softly. "Would you like a drink?" "Water, please," Elijah replies. His voice carries calm, a quiet authority born not from anger, but from survival and dignity reclaimed. The plane lifts, sunlight spilling across his seat. Outside, clouds drift lazily, indifferent. Elijah's reflection meets his gaze in the glass, calm, unbroken. He thinks of the table in the cafe, of his father's words, of every lesson in presence and truth. Each moment of silence, each small act of restraint had led here. Passengers murmur, unaware. A child giggles nearby, a suitcase rattles in the overhead bin. Everything ordinary, and yet the atmosphere hums with change. New training posters, conversations in break rooms, a subtle but pervasive shift. Dignity now has weight, and those who wielded authority too harshly carry the memory of it softly, like a lesson rather than a punishment. Elijah exhales, settling back. He feels the arc of the story fold in on itself. Power challenged, truth acknowledged, silence honored. Narration. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it lands softly, in the quiet of a nod, the unassuming gaze of a stranger, the calm reclaimed in one person's reflection. It is not celebrated loudly, but it is remembered deeply. The flight attendant returns. "Anything else?" "No," Elijah says, voice even. "Nothing else." The cabin continues its gentle hum. Outside, the sky stretches wide and impartial, but inside, every small gesture carries weight. Justice has arrived, softly, fully, without spectacle.